You know, Alpha Minecraft has a lot of quirks, and this might be my favorite bug so far. Currently you can't really hear me because I am sneaking, but once I stop... Hey, welcome back to 100% Minecraft, where I do everything the game has to offer before updating. Today I'm starting underground, just to look for my first diamonds. I have to say, with every windy cave branch I explore, I have to stop myself more and more from just building a cave base. I mean, look at that! After half an hour of exploring, I stumbled upon the cave entrance from the first episode. And I didn't even enter here today. But cave bases have to wait. I can't just slip back into old habits, only 3 episodes into a series. Anyway, I can still report that random cave and mob damage noises still make me jump regularly. Let's see how long this is going to last. Finally, found some diamonds. Ooh. Only took like another 40 minutes or so. Let's make sure they're all safe before I start mining. Okay, 3, that's perfect for pickaxe. I would like some more though. Okay, 4. That's actually perfect. Okay, there's absolutely nothing next to us. That's perfect. Okay, how am I going to do this? Here's the most important part of it all. First we need to mine 1 diamond. Okay, this is our original first diamond. So we're going to drop it over here. Nobody needs diamonds. And now, let's get the rest. Quickly craft a pickaxe. And pick up the diamond again. This is our original first diamond we've ever mined. So we will store that one somewhere, probably where we have the wooden pickaxe. And now the pick is safe. Perfect. This is all I needed. I also brought 14 obsidian for the next patch. This is, as I mentioned, a requirement for me to update. And now I feel comfortable actually going for the build I wanted to do today. But before we start with building, let's talk about this building. As you can see, I removed the big water wheel. I feel like I am not quite the builder to pull that one off with like the limited block palette that I have. Maybe if I were better, I could maybe do that. Maybe if I built a bigger water wheel, it could work. But I just wasn't satisfied with that one. So I kind of changed it up. For one, we now have a garden over there and everything is kind of fenced in. We're gonna have to talk about wheat in a second. But I also kind of want to talk about like the plans for this village. Because as I talked about this is like Alpha Village, Alpha Town. And everything here is supposed to look like it was built in either Alpha or Beta Minecraft. So they are like very simple shapes, I'm gonna call them, like compared to like what you see in modern Minecraft. But I kind of want to keep that vibe, which is why we also have like these fence windows and stuff. But I also want to keep like the whole theme where different towns kind of just use resources that they can actually use. Currently we neither have a way for the villagers here to get wood or to get stone, so this is going to be something for the near future, but it's not what I'm going to be building today. For now I'm just here to talk about wheat, do some prep work and all that stuff, and I kind of keep you up to date. So wheat is kind of weird in early Minecraft, because first of all, farmland can be trampled quite easily. Like if I'm just walking around here, yep, it was trampled, right? Like this is quite different to modern Minecraft where you actually have to jump to break farmland. But this is why I have like these pathways here on the side, so I'm not constantly trampling it. Also, you might have noticed that there is no grass here, because as I mentioned in the last episode, there is no bone, so we can't get bone meal, we can't grow grass, and it just doesn't exist in Minecraft yet. So how do we get seeds? Well, easiest way is obviously get some wheat. You know, punch it, get some more seeds, so you can actually spread that. But obviously, your first few seeds don't come from the farm. So instead what you do is actually till some grass, not regular dirt, just grass, and there's like a small chance to just drop some seeds. But before we properly start building, I actually want to try some things. Well, there's actually one thing I want to try and one thing I actually need. The first thing that I actually need is a compass. Compasses have existed since basically the beginning of Alpha. But first of all, the interesting thing about this one is, look at how many different states there are. Like, I think in modern Minecraft there are like a handful of them, but according to the wiki there are like over 100 different states for the compass, depending on where you're looking. They obviously removed that at some point. It's really not necessary to be like that accurate, but we are going to need it today. The other thing I want to check out is actually a boat. So I've been running around quite a lot around this little island, and technically the island, like where I am here, is connected to where my mine is, or like the cave. It's technically not really a mine, and this is also where I'm gonna be building. So let's just hop into a boat. Look at that boat. It's been so long since I've ridden like one of those old boats. It's crazy. Like, it changed so much obviously over the years. How do I control you again? I can use like where I'm looking, but I can also look like use A and D basically. But I do remember being able to like look into a direction. I just want to see how fast I actually am. Is it actually worth to use a boat? Because like boats are also really fragile in this version, right? Like in modern Minecraft, obviously you can just pick it up. In this one, if I punch a boat, it instead just kind of falls apart into planks and sticks. And I'm gonna have to be completely honest here. I feel like it's slightly faster than walking, but because I have to walk, or like, I guess, drive around the entire island here, I don't think it's actually that much quicker than just walking between two places. Wait, there's even more clay. I thought like the one clay pocket was over there. That's actually really neat, because I actually had a plan for that clay, but let's talk about that in a moment. So here's also another thing, like you might have noticed that I've not really been exploring over the last few episodes. This is mainly just because I kind of want to keep the world as small as possible, at least in the beginning, because like once the terrain generation changes, I don't want to have to walk like 10,000 blocks to find anything new. But that's just like a minor thing. But we will definitely have to explore starting next episode a little bit for some of the other resources. Anyway, now that I've made it to this place again, this is like the torch that marks the spider spawner. I'm gonna have to leave this boat. Let's slow down, and to leave it, I can't actually press the shift key. You can hear it, I'm pressing it right now. Actually have to right click the boat. And now to find the exact spawn. I do remember spawning like around here. And I mentioned that I like to mark the exact spawn, like when I spawn into my world, but obviously you can just use a compass. And because we use one later on anyway, just want to figure out, it might be this block here. And it's getting dark. Okay, this is the exact 0, 0 coordinate. I don't actually know which of those 4 blocks is like the actual spawn block then, because obviously blocks or the coordinates start like in this specific corner here. This is like how it works. It doesn't start like in the middle of a block, which means that this is the 0, 0 corner, like XZ corner. But since obviously we can't see coordinates, you know, we talked about this doesn't exist yet on the debug screen, makes it a little bit harder. But that means like one of those 4 blocks is where we spawn. I'm gonna have to figure out the specifics later on. I'm just gonna have to mark it first though. I'm just gonna place some planks. It's like one of those 4. Now the question obviously is, why did I mark this place? Well, I do have an idea for basically a base near spawn. I mentioned that I don't really want to build a lot of regular bases. I want to build like more villages and towns and cities and like more buildings in that sense, because it's something I rarely do when I play normally. But there's going to be like one massive, I don't really want to call it like the main base, because there are like some caveats to this specific building. But this is going to be a museum that is going to follow us, and like every single update I am going to add to this base, this museum, and add like a room or like multiple rooms that are connected that include everything that we can do, or like everything that exists in Minecraft in a specific version. And basically the idea is that we are going to spawn here. By the way, zombie. Yeah. see if I can hit you. Hey, perfect. Basically, we are going to spawn here whenever we don't have a bed or anything set up, and we're going to spawn on like this platform, and then we can look up and down, and we are going to have like this massive tower that's like hollow in the inside, where you can look like up and down to like the different levels, and every single level is going to include a lot of stuff for each of the patches. Not all of the versions are going to take up like a whole floor, for example, but I have like some ideas in my mind how it's going to look. But unlike proper buildings, I'm not gonna be planning a lot in the beginning. I kind of want to have like different areas that build kind of organically into each other. It's going to make sense like over the versions. For now, I just kind of have to figure out where I want to build the first layer. And my idea for that one is probably around here. There's a specific reason for that, and that is that I want to include the spider spawner, because obviously we have built that one in this version, and I would like to have the spider spawner as part of the museum. So it would be nice to have like part of the terrain. It's going to be like, again, like a very organic build for the most part, because while it is a museum, I kind of want to have you experience basically the world. And like one of the ideas is basically I'm gonna have like a minecart rail that leads down into the spawner, maybe into the AFK area, maybe also into the the pickup area for all the string. I kind of want to have this one usable, which is quite unlike the other ideas that I have for the space, because while I call it a base, one of the massive issues I'm going to be facing in the future is just that there's going to be so much stuff in Minecraft, and everything would have to be running. Like if this were a full base with like all of the functionality, I feel like it would be getting way too laggy, which is why I'm trying to avoid all of that stuff. But obviously stuff like a spawner, for example, doesn't actually take like a lot of processing power unless I'm actually standing near it, because it doesn't actually spawn anything or something like that. And this is the point where I started building the ground layer for this room. Or so I thought, because while placing all the dirt I had time to think. This is really going to take a while, especially with the stone tools and limited amount of resources, so why not use the natural terrain instead? So I took down the platform, just to remember at the very end that I could actually be running into an issue in the future. All of the rooms I'm building are supposed to only contain things from their respective versions. The issue being that mobs are also included in that list of things, which means squids. Squids spawn at an elevation up to y equals 63, which is the water level after the adventure update. Luckily they will only be able to spawn inside of rivers and oceans once we get some of the terrain overhauls, but knowing my luck, this area is going to turn into one of those biomes. So I will have to do some more terraforming in the future. But with the limited time that I have for this recording session, I instead just decided to make a rough outline for the different areas of this room. I will go into the specifics in the coming episodes, but for now just know that all the different items will be stored in around 8 to 10 areas depending on how exactly you want to count it. One of those areas is what I would like to call the redstone house. It has basically two functionalities. For one, it's going to present all the redstone that exists in the alpha version that we're currently playing, and it is also going to be an entrance to the next alpha version. There's going to be like a main entrance from the main interior spire, I'm gonna call it, like the stairway that goes up, but there's also going to be a path from the first room to the second. But to properly explain how that room is going to work, I'm going to start a new section, a totally original one at that I'm going to call Redstone with Galef. Ooh, I would like to actually show my face, but the second F5 functionality has not been implemented yet. No! Redstone can be rather esoteric, which is why I'm going to be really thorough during those sections. I believe that the reason why so many people struggle with redstone is because to understand redstone, you basically have to understand two different disciplines. The first one being, the actual redstone components in Minecraft. This is very game specific, and you're going to have to learn the different quirks of the redstone blocks in this game. Obviously, I'm going to explain them as best as I can. But you also need to understand logic. When I'm talking about logic, I'm talking about logical statements, their truth values, as well as their combination. So let me try to explain statements and their truth values. In front of me I have 5 signs with 5 different texts on them. Some of those are statements. Grass is green is a statement. It's a declaration that can be checked for its so-called truth value. The truth value can either be true or false. Sometimes they're called something different, like for example 1 or 0, which we have a lot in computer science. This statement is true. We can just check grass, at least in Minecraft, is always green. How was your day? Very important question. You should answer that in the comments. But this is sadly not a statement. This is not a declaration and we cannot check for its truth value. We could check your answer for a truth value, but that is beyond the scope of this video. Do you prefer green grass? This again is a question, but in this case we only have 2 possible answers, yes or no. As I mentioned, there are like technically different values for the truth and false that I mentioned in the very beginning. This is still not a statement, even though we only have like a binary choice of answers. This is still a question. This also means that we cannot actually check this specific text for a truth value. We can only check your answer. Your answer would be a statement. The moon is larger than the sun. Well, I would say that's probably not the case, but this is still a statement. As opposed to the first statement that we had, this is a false statement. It has a truth value of false or 0, depending on how you want to formulate it. Extraterrestrials exist. Well, this also sounds like a statement. Now the question is it a statement? Well, I don't know the answer. Do you? Well, in the discipline of logic, that doesn't actually matter. There is an objective answer to this. We just don't know it yet. Now the question is, how does this actually help us? Well, we can actually formulate similar statements for redstone. The most basic one is just a statement about the redstone components. The lever is flipped. Well, as you can see, the redstone next to the lever is lit up. This means that the lever is currently flipped, so this is a true statement. Well, the redstone just turned off. The lever is not flipped anymore, which means the lever is flipped is still a statement, but currently it is false. So for redstone, this means that our inputs, which means the redstone components here, are statements, and the redstone wire itself carries the truth value. But a small contraption like this is obviously quite boring, right? This is basically just a lever. You don't actually have to think about any sort of logic here. You can technically just, press a button or like a pressure plate to open doors. Well, but we also want to go into more complex logic. What I've built here is a so-called OR gate. This one has 3 different inputs. All of them are different. This lever is flipped statements. We have the statement 3 different times. At the end, we have one last statement which depicts the result. Any lever is flipped. Once any lever is flipped, the light turns on. In this case, it doesn't actually matter how many of the levers are flipped as long as one of them is flipped. As you can see, I have 2 of them flipped. I can turn this one off again. I can flip all of them. The entire time, this redstone torch stays lit up. This is what we call an OR gate. When we're talking about gates, we are talking about the implementation of so-called logical operators that we have in the discipline of logic. In this case, it is the OR symbol. The OR operator returns a value of true whenever at least one of the statements that is getting connected here has a value of true. It doesn't matter how many exactly those are, as long as there's at least one of them. An OR gate in Minecraft is actually really simple, because every single piece of redstone wire is an OR gate. As you can see, if I can place multiple levers here, each one of those levers, if I flip it, turns on the redstone wire. Doesn't matter how many I have flipped, as long as one of them at least is flipped, the entire wire is lit. The next operator we have is the so-called NOT operator. The NOT operator inverts the truth value of a statement. Here we have the levers flipped. Currently, the lever is not flipped. So you can see the redstone wire is not active, but the redstone torch is active, because this is how we are building a NOT gate. If I flip this lever, then the redstone torch turns off. which means that the lever is not flipped. So it's a false statement, right? Like the lever is not flipped is a false statement right now, while the lever is flipped is a true statement right now. These are the only two logical operators that Minecraft has. But the world of logic actually has a lot more operators. Like currently we can just ask for ORs, and we can also ask if something is not true. But what if we want to check if, for example, two levers are flipped? Can we? And if we can, how can we figure out if both levers are flipped at the same time? Sadly, Minecraft doesn't have a direct answer for that. We have to do it in a roundabout way. To do that, we have to find some sort of equivalency in our previous statements. And we can actually start with something relatively simple. This lever is flipped. Is there another way we could still make the same statement without saying this lever is flipped? Well, yeah, we do know about two of them, which could actually be quite simple. We could ask if this lever currently is flipped, right, using this redstone wire. But we could also ask if this lever is still flipped by using another one, right? Like now we have an OR. Is this lever flipped or is this lever flipped? If any of this is true, which is always going to be at the same time, we have a lit wire. But that doesn't really seem to help us. Well, what about the other operator that we have? The not operator. Well, we could also say this lever is not flipped. Well, this would be the inverse. But what if we take the inverse of the inverse again? What I have just built is a double NOT gate. Currently, this statement is this lever is flipped. This one is the lever is not flipped. And this one is the lever is not flipped. So if I flip the lever, this light turns on because it's not flipped. Now that we know that we can technically reformulate our statements, maybe we can reformulate the statement both levers are flipped at the same time. Well, maybe we should start by actually looking at this and maybe reformulating this. What if we don't ask for both levers being flipped? What if we instead ask for the inverse? Since we know that we can just inverse the inverse of a statement to reach the original statement again, maybe we can reach the inverse of this statement first and then inverse it. Well, the inverse of the statement is not that both levers are not flipped. Instead it is that at least one of the levers is not flipped. And maybe you can already see it. In this sign it says at least one lever is not flipped, which means that we are probably asking for an OR gate here. We do know that an OR gate in Minecraft is basically just a redstone wire. So we can technically just connect those to the levers. And well, we are not quite at the statement yet. Currently we are still asking if one of the levers is at least flipped. But we kind of want the inverse to happen, right? We are asking for the cases where the levers are not flipped. Well, what if we just inverse the lever signals? Well, the circuit would currently look like this. We have this lever is flipped and this lever is flipped. Well, they are both currently false statement. They are currently both not flipped, which means that the redstone torches that are connected like this are currently active. Both of those levers are currently inactive, which means that at least one of them is not flipped. If I now flip one of those, the redstone torch here turns off, but it is currently still active because this one is still active because this lever is not flipped. If I now also flip this lever, both of those torches are off, which means that this wire is also off. And as we can see, at least one lever is not flipped is now a false statement because both of the levers are flipped. If I unflip one of those levers, this statement becomes true again. And since we know that this is the inverse to this statement, we can now inverse it again. Which means that both levers are flipped. Well, as you can see, this one is flipped, this one is flipped. The wire is true. If I unflipped at least one of them, then this wire turns off. We have now built a so-called AND gate. It is currently quite bulky. There are smaller ways to build this, but this is basically the concept that we are going to be using all the time. There are other logical operators, but luckily there's a mathematician way smarter than me by the name of De Morgan, who created De Morgan's laws. These laws basically tell us how to convert a statement into another. And it is also proven that you can use just a subset of all of those operators to build all of the other ones. One of the options that you have to build all the other operators is to use not and or at the same time. Which means that Minecraft, even at this point, is logically complete. Being logically complete basically just means that whatever logical statement I want to construct, I can do this in Minecraft. In theory, there are some limitations when it comes to, for example, the wire length and stuff and space requirements, but on a purely theoretical level, we can make every single logical statement. Now that we're done with the basics, we can get more complex. The easiest way to get more complex is just by adding more parts to it. Like for example in this circuit over here. Just to make it more clear and simplify it a lot, I use just letters to indicate the different statements. The statement A is that this lever, I'm going to call it lever A, is flipped. Same for lever B and lever C. We can now have proper terms to actually describe a statement. Like this, for example, it says not A and B and C. This basically just means that the lever A is the only one not flipped in like proper English. That means that B has to be flipped, C has to be flipped, but A is not allowed to be flipped because this is all connected by ANDs. And we can see if I flip all of the levers at the same time, just like I did before, this wire is still off. But if I unflip the A lever again, right, the one that's in here indicated by a knot, then suddenly the wire turns on. Redstone in this version is still very limited. As you can see, we only have redstone wires and redstone torches basically, and we do not have many ways to interact with the redstone or have the redstone interact with the world. We do not have dispensers, we do not have pistons, we do not have comparators to read contents of a chest, we do not have observers to check if something changed in the world. Currently the only way we can interact with the redstone is basically levers and buttons. But we can at least make combination locks, because one of the things that we can interact with is doors. As you can see, I currently should have probably had that one off. If I enter the right combination, the door opens, and if I have anything wrong in here, then the door closes. And this is basically what I want to do. I want to have a door like this with a redstone, I'm gonna call it like puzzle if you wanna call it that, or like a combination that we have to enter. And behind there is going to be the nether portal for the next version. And while I'm going to build that off camera, just because this episode is kind of running long and I'm running out of time to record it, there's one last thing that I want to show you. Currently we have to use levers, but levers are kind of boring, aren't they? Right? I kind of want to use this museum, this room, to show off like all the stuff that exists. Well, the issue obviously being that if I use, for example, pressure plates, then the signals won't last long, right? Like I can run over them, but the moment I leave, the door closes. Yeah, I can place like a item on this pressure plate and stand on the stone one, because the wooden one counts items and other entities, while the stone ones only counts players and mobs. But it's not enough to have like an interesting combination. Well, how do we fix that? We basically want a way for the pressure plate to remember that it was pressed. Well, sadly that's not possible, but we can have the redstone remember. To do that, we are using a construct called an RS latch, or to be more precise, an RS NOR latch. The RS in there does not stand for redstone, it stands for reset and set. Basically, it is a memory cell. The easiest version to build this one is just by placing some redstone torches like this. And as you can see, one of those wires is currently active, while the other one isn't active. But if I power this line for just a moment and then stop powering it, it stays powered, while this one unpowers. If I power this one again, then it stays powered. If I switch over again, then this is now powered. What we can now do is basically have two pressure plates, one to turn this whole system on and one to turn it off. So we are basically turning these two pressure plates into a lever. Right, I'm standing on here, the door stays open because it remembers it. I press on this one and suddenly the door stops being open. This obviously doesn't just work with pressure plates, it also works with buttons, right? I can step on this one, this is our set line now. And this would be our reset line. If I press this button, the gate is reset and the door closes. Using all of that, I can now make combination locks with like all the redstone components that exist. which basically is just pressure plates and buttons. With that being said, I'm gonna have to end the episode here. I'm kind of running out of time. I will have to build the circuit in the redstone building that I'm planning to have over there. And then next episode, we are going to enter the nether and actually check out the building once I've built it. There's probably going to be a temporary building there for now. I don't actually have the materials I want to build this out of, but you know, it's all going to change over the next few episodes. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode and could maybe even learn something new. I'll be seeing you next time. Till then, have a good one and bye bye.